I've always had a standing desk until now. Now I just stand and walk around, and people go, "Where are you going?"
But you don't do anything when you're at your desk. You just talk.
What are you doing? No, I talk when I'm not at my desk, which is why we're here now. Why we're here now to talk about who builds equity with our founder, with our chairman, Brad Elliott. This is a joy. Thank you for being here. So what we're going to do with Who Builds Equity is share stories of how Equity Bank got to where we are and make sure that there's opportunities for all of you to contribute to our conversation. So we've got Russell Colburn here, and we've got Emily. Please share who you are, Emily.
I'm Emily. I'm a financial engagement officer with the bank. I've been here for a little over 2 years. I completed the bank management training program, so diving into a new role and helping out younger customers learn how to start building wealth.
And you shepherd people?
Yes. Emily
Yes.
Sheppard.
It's a profession.
Shepherd's Beard, that's
It is,
right.
it is
Yeah, you
a
don't
profession.
never leave the last name out there. And Russell,
Yeah.
we all know who you are, but
Yeah. I'm the public relations and communications manager for the bank. Started in May of 2023. So really excited to do this with all of you. And when we settled on the name Who Builds Equity, who better to have as our first real guest than the man who actually built equity and is part of why it is what it is today. So thanks for being here, Brad. This is Brandon's deal, but we want to talk to you about the anatomy of a merger. And so we think that we can really get to every little piece, every little nook and cranny of a merger in 10 minutes. So that's what we're going to do. Of course not. But why don't you tell us how it gets started? You always say banks are sold, not bought. So how does that come about?
So banks are sold and not bought. And what that means is somebody on the other side has to decide that they want to do something different than they've been doing. They don't want to own the bank any longer. That might be because they have so many family members that they need to have liquidity available when they pass away, that they can pass that easily to their heirs. And Equity Bank provides that ability because we're publicly traded currency. And so if you have 6 family members or 10 or 15, they can all end up with the shares of Equity Bank at a step up in basis, which means they don't have to pay tax on that transaction. That drives it. Sometimes it's age of ownership. Sometimes the age of management. Sometimes the age of the management is so old that they can't get new managers or don't want to take the time or the risk of getting new managers. So they say this is the time to do something different. There's a whole host of reasons or variables in between that, but it's really driven by those two things.
you know, the thing that you've done with acquisitions is not lost what makes Equity Bank special, and that's working in the community and still providing that opportunity that with a larger bank like Equity Bank is today, we can provide a lot more for our customers. However, what gets lost oftentimes in an acquisition by a larger company is that you lose that connection. But you've made that a point to make that a focus of how Equity Bank works. Can you share how you've continued as we grow, as our footprint continues to grow, why it's important to remain a strong community bank working in communities?
Well, when you're acquiring an institution or merging with an institution, what you're really is getting the customer base. And so the question is, how do you keep that customer base? Well, a lot of the reasons why people bank where they bank is because of that community, or because of the contact or relationship with the institution that they've had over time. A lot of times it's longer than 5 years. A lot of times it's longer than 10 years. So that relationship and staying engaged in that community is very important, because that's really why they bank where they bank. They bank in those towns. Most of our towns are towns less than 10,000 people. They bank there because of a relationship they had with somebody at the bank. A lot of times that person left 15 years ago, but the relationship stayed because it's an institution, and we have to keep that institution going and that feel going. And it's not just a feel. You got to remain invested in the community. You got to do community events. You got to give dollars back to the community. You have to do all the things that's right for that community, and that's why it's in our value system.
Emily, you come from a small community of less than 10,000 people. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Maybe,
Very fair.
maybe even smaller
It
than
is.
that. What's your perspective on it? You talk to people all the time about how important their finances are, and young people specifically. What have you found at Equity Bank and how we work in communities, coming from a small community?
Yeah, when I first started with the bank, I wasn't sure how we could do both with the metro markets and the community markets, but I've seen it work time and time again, and we really do keep that, that personal touch and really involved in all of the communities, no matter how small they are. And that's something that I really appreciate, and something that growing up, the bank is sponsoring your sporting events, and the people that you're seeing all around town. And so I have really enjoyed watching how Equity continues to do that, no matter what the name on the outside of the building is.
That's excellent. And that's what I think is so much fun about how we have built Equity. And that's the culture from the very beginning of how Equity has been built. It is in the communities. We're open when others weren't open. We're there seeing people, going to see people when others aren't. That's part of the culture of how Equity has been built. You've remained very clear with that message throughout all these acquisitions. Is it something that you think about daily?
Well, I think it's just my belief, and so it's not something that I think we should do because I mean it's just a strategy. I think the benefit that I have is I started in McPherson at a small branch in college, and so I knew what it's like to take care of customers, and I knew what they needed. And then as I grew into a consumer lender and a mortgage lender, and then worked in McPherson at another institution, and then worked in Wichita. By being in the branches and running those branches, I understand what it takes to be successful in those markets. And so I think I have a unique perspective on that a lot of people don't, because I didn't start in a corporate office. I started in a market, in a branch, as a teller, as a CSR, as a consumer lender. So I saw those things. And so I know what it takes because I lived it. And I didn't live it for 6 months. I mean, it was 10 years of my career. As you see that and you know that, you understand what it takes to be successful. In a town like McPherson, and then I also was in a town like Wichita. So I also understand there's a difference. People care a lot about things in McPherson, and people don't care anything about those exact same things in Wichita. And vice versa, people care a lot about things in Wichita, and they don't care anything about those things in McPherson. So that's why we have the metro and the community market focus, because people really don't care in Wichita who their teller is and who hires their teller. But man, in McPherson, if you don't know who hired that teller and who that teller is as the manager of that town, it matters. And so same thing in Guyman, Liberal, Falls City, any of those other places, it matters in those towns. But if you ask if they ask, Brian Chamberlain in Wichita who your teller is at the West Branch, that's really not what the customer's thinking about. They don't bank with Brian Chamberlain because of that teller. So it's a completely different perspective. That teller's really important in those in all the branches, but for different reasons. And the communities care about who hires and makes those decisions around those kind of processes. They understand they're different in a metro market versus a community market.
And if you have the right company infrastructure, you serve both seamlessly, and the customer or the
Right.
and the banker doesn't really notice the difference.
Right, and it's a challenge and a struggle organizationally, because and this is the challenge, Brandon, is people want to do things one way. It's easier, right, and more efficient, and we're all about efficiencies and processes. And by the way, I am too, but this creates two different processes, and so I have to struggle with marketing. I have to struggle with operations. I have to struggle with everybody wants to make this back to one. And you can't do that. And we came here, we actually did a strategic planning session in 2012 because we were going into Kansas City with First Community Bank. And they said, you got to be metro focused or community focused. And so I slept on it that night, and we had 2 days. And I came back and said, we aren't going to be one. It's not going to work. Bank of America did one. It didn't work. Bank 4 did one, it didn't work. You can't give me an example of somebody who does one strategy and it works. So we're going to do two and be better than they are. Because if you're community focused in metro market, it doesn't work either.
Yeah. Brad, we're recording this in January, and we just closed the Frontier Bank deal. Not long before that, we had the NBC Oklahoma deal. I bet I'm right to say that no two deals are the same, and you're always surprised of the things that come out of them. So how different are just those two? And as we are one of the most acquisitive banks in the nation, how are we still learning and seeing things that we didn't even anticipate with some of these, either from the customer base, geography, or culture?
Yeah, so those things are completely different, and mostly because of why they were sold.
Yeah.
So NBC was sold because of age of ownership and age of management. Both H and Glenn are in their past their mid-60s, and Ken is 80 years old. And so the driver of that was succession, and what are we going to do from that? By the way, Ken is one of our largest shareholders on our board. He's very competent, very sharp, and very active person. But he also understands, he's also smart enough to understand that things are going to change over the next 5 or 10 years, and I want to be prepared for it. That's why he's really good at what he's done over his career. Nebraska is different because it was a young organization built to grow, but they also had an ownership base that was built to grow for a period of time, and then they wanted an exit.
Yeah.
So it was age of ownership. It just happened they weren't in their 80s. They just happened to be at the end of their life cycle of that ownership group. And so that one is different because we have a different group of management left afterwards that has a different perspective on that. I mean, every deal is different in how they've been put together. Where Ken put his bank together in the 80s and built it one little bank at a time, and Frontier put their banks together to grow fast and quickly and through attracting customers differently than the others. So they're completely different all the time. We did Kirksville 1 year, and 3 months later we did Kansas Land, right? Completely different organizations, and the reason that they sold, one had somebody pass away and was owned by his wife, and one was about ready to fail. So and now you have a different set of deals. What I love about this job and what I love about the acquisition process is with ADD like I have, nothing is ever the same. And so it's different all the time. So if I was just doing this over and over again and it was repetitive, I would get bored with it.
Yeah.
These are not repetitive. The negotiations aren't repetitive. The processes aren't repetitive. So.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that because I think that's something that I find unique about our process. And when we do acquire banks, we don't have a designated M&A team, and that is something that you've spoke on before. And can you explain that a little bit and what your thought process is behind that?
Sure. So I worked places that had M&A teams, Koch Industries, and Sunflower Bank before that. Mm. And when you have a dedicated M&A team, their job is to do M&A.
Right.
But it's just to get it closed. And then once it's closed, it's the operating teams to clean up the mess they created. And so you have all this conflict between, okay, they did due diligence, they did the merger, and now you get to go run it. And you end up with this pile of crap sometimes. And I when I went to Koch, I ended up with a pile of crap because I was the operator. And so
I thought you worked in fertilizer.
I did. If you haven't gone through a conversion from a standpoint of done the back end operating side when we had conversion team people that would come in and help you. And I learned also from those guys that they come in and help you with your conversion. They just really wanted to get the thing done so they can go back to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That's where they used to all live. That's the worst thing in the world. I mean, you like forced balance my accounts because you wanted them to balance, but they really never balanced. But we got to get it closed because it's midnight.
Right.
And so the reason I'm stuck on that, I think that's a word you used.
Yeah.
The reason I'm stuck on that is because I want the operating teams, the due diligence teams, and the M&A team to be all the same people. There's nobody to blame.
I appreciate how you your philosophy on that, and I think that it works great. I've seen, exactly what you're saying. It means a lot more to the people on the other side of it too, knowing that our team is going through just as much. We're not just designating people to only handle them. We're all doing that and keeping the rest of the organization running at the same time.
And they're real operators, right?
Yeah.
So when Amada goes and is the liaison ambassador, she goes back home, she runs a branch and a market. And so she really knows what's going on a daily basis, not just on a M&A training side. She actually has to go back and run the bank and run the market. And so when she's telling them, this is how I actually do things, it's because she's actually doing them. Right. She's not just coming from someplace to go do it. So
Yeah, when you acquire, the one thing that you can't leave behind is a mess, as you say, because those customers are showing up the next day, and we got to treat them with the one thing that everybody wants to be treated with: good service, all right? And so the consistent thing across Equity Bank is the service, all right? You've remarked many times that Good to Great is a book that has really helped focus the way you do things. Is that fair to say?
yes.
And what are the things that we can do well? And I think it's clear as day that you focused right in on we can service customers better than any other bank in our footprint.
So what I think is interesting about services is just effort.
Yeah.
I mean, services doesn't cost you anything more.
And effort doesn't
And
either.
actually, if you look at it, they say it takes more energy to frown than it does to smile. So service is really free because it takes less energy. But greeting somebody when they walk in the door, it takes less energy to look at somebody and say hello than it does to look down and act like you don't catch their eye. Because it's taking more energy to make sure you don't catch their eye than it does actually to catch their eye. So just look at them, say hi, and you've actually accomplished most in service. If you just look at somebody and say hello, you can go on a 10-minute phone call because they know that you know they're there. They don't care about it, but if they're having to try to catch your eye, now they're frustrated.
So you've often remarked that working with customers is your favorite part of any part of your day. That's where the effort that we have to all put forth is, right? And I believe that our customers aren't only those that come from the outside in, but are also all of us across our footprint. We're each other's customers. And if we're there to put a better effort out, not only is it free, but it's more fun. Isn't it more fun when you get to work with the customer as opposed to looking down when somebody walks in?
I mean, the reason I say that is I get energy from working with customers, and I think they're interesting. Mm-hmm. But I also tell people, and I mean this, is if you don't like doing that, you should get another job. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be in finance, and I'm not picking on finance, but if you want to be in finance where you should be focused in on the things that you're focused in on and not talking to people all the time, that's the job you should have. Don't be in the front with customers. And we have people in the back with customers also, like you said. But man, you better really like customers. They shouldn't be annoying to you because and by the way, I also tell everybody, none of us in this company have a job without a customer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We only make money off of customers. I mean, that's revenue to us. So if you don't like them, then we don't have jobs. I mean, we don't need any of us.
Well, good communication is how all of that happens, right? And this platform, this discussion, this opportunity to talk to Brad Elliott, this is a communication platform. And we all want to communicate across our footprint with you anytime that you've got questions or ideas or customers that we want to share stories so that we can continue to grow the culture of Equity Bank. In fact, I think we've got Who Builds Equity at equitybank.com.
Yeah.
You are welcome to send that because we live in Outlook. Did you know that, Brad?
We live everywhere.
But my point is, Who Builds Equity at equitybank.com. Put in the subject what you want to talk about. Please don't go on and on. It probably won't get read well because lots of us are ADD around here. But that's an important opportunity for the rest of us to continue this communication story. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Russell?
I do have a question for Brad.
Please.
Okay, take me back to 2003, Brad Elliott. Would he believe that we're here 20 years later at nearly $8 billion in assets? And what advice would you give him looking back now?
One of the most important things I learned working at Koch Industries was numbers aren't something to focus on and aren't something to hold you back. So most people are held back because they start trying to measure themselves by a number and say, well, I can't do that because it's so big. And I would have never bought the bank if I worried about a number because I didn't have the $4.5 million that I raised, or $4,777,778, because I didn't have any money. And so if you do the right thing every day, good things happen. And I think you just have to keep focusing on that. So I never really thought of that. It's just, are we going to do the right thing for customers? Does it equate to making money for shareholders? And will that take us where we want to go? And that's what we did. And so it's still all I think about today. I don't think about what size we are. More than the size of the bank, the number of employees scares me. So 1,000 employees. I mean, what frustrates me with that is I don't know the employees' names, and I don't know who they are, and I don't know about their families. When we were 19 employees, I knew everything about everybody, and I don't know that today. And so that bothers me more. I actually get to know the larger customers more than I get to know the number of employees. Yeah. And then the second part of your question was?
Any advice you'd have
for myself?
Yeah.
Oh, man. If I gave myself advice back then, I'd be scared to death. I'd have never done it.
True.
That's a good point.
I mean, the best advice is, I say this at the all-employee meeting, is one of the quotes from Martin Luther King, is the biggest fear people have is taking a step because they can't see sometimes the stairwell that they're stepping into, and they don't know if the stair exists. So they don't take the step. And so I think the best advice I have, and I had it back then, was go ahead and take the step. Because what are you going to do, just fall?
Yeah.
Who cares? Falling down isn't the worst thing that happened to you. I mean, babies learn to walk because they learn to fall. And so I think the biggest advice I would have for myself is just keep doing that and not worry about it.
Keep doing that and not worry about it, man.
Yeah.
Let's keep doing that and let's
Why don't we
not
keep
worry
doing
about
the
it.
podcast?
Indeed, let's do it. Let's keep communicating. Brad, we're grateful that you'd spend time with us on Who Builds Equity and showing us who builds equity. So, Brad Elliott, founder, chairman, thanks for being on Who Builds Equity.